Why don't we just go ahead and kick things off by having you guys kind of introduce yourselves. Who are you? What does your company do?
Oh, wow. Mike's from all sides. Hi, Sophia Lopez. I'm a founder of Kaleido. We're the blockchain business cloud. We're actually part of Consensus's venture studio model. So Andrew Keys spoke earlier, and then Kavita will be up talking later on the ventures side. And I'll tell you more about myself as we go along. But basically, just for context, we're on the enterprise side of things with blockchain. We built enterprise blockchain platform. So much more on the business and helping businesses better, faster, cheaper. I think some of the VCs were getting into that side of things.
Hi, everyone. I'm Zach Herbert. I run operations for a local startup called Nebulous. We think of ourselves as a blockchain infrastructure company, both on the hardware and software side. So we currently have two projects. One is called Sahil, which is a decentralized cloud storage project. It's one of the older projects in the cryptocurrency space, went live in 2015. And then also we have a project called Obelisk, where we actually build ASIC mining hardware for a couple different cryptocurrencies. And technically, I'm on leave from HBS. I was supposed to graduate last year.
Hey everyone, I'm Faurve, and I run marketing at Oasis Labs. And Oasis Labs is a privacy-first cloud computing platform, and we use blockchain in addition to other technologies to make it work. I will say I'm new to the crypto blockchain space. I've been in blockchain for about 6 months, starting at Oasis Labs, and before that was in consumer tech at Apple.
Hi everyone, my name is Sahil, and I'm one of the co-founders of Harmony. We're a Silicon Valley-based project which is building a fast and secure public blockchain. We are implementing sharding, which is one of the traditional ways to scale databases, to scale blockchain. And right now it's an exciting time. We're trying to figure out how to drive adoption of this underlying infrastructure. I also got involved in the blockchain space a couple of years ago. And had also fortunately spent some time working with Zach. So Boston's is becoming a great environment for this space. I was also fortunate to be a part of the blockchain club at HBS. So excited to be back and see this amazing conference put up. So thanks guys for putting this up.
Great. So let's just sort of kick things off with I think a pressing question, right? So why blockchain, right? If you could have started a startup that did anything at all, why blockchain to solve your customers' problems?
Sure. I guess I could start here. So in prior roles, I spent about 10 years at IBM after I got my MBA. I have an engineering undergrad actually from Harvard. And the undergraduate side, didn't go to HBS. But I was running a multi-billion-dollar portfolio on the enterprise space. It was a mainframe portfolio. So I had hardware, software services there, working with very, mission-critical systems around the globe, and just had an innovation portfolio as part of that, cloud analytics, mobile security. Working with clients, really saw that a lot of the innovations that happened at the web and commerce tiers never made it, hasn't made it over the decades to the systems of record, which run these mission-critical systems. And clients were going to be replatforming these payment rails, supply chain, EDI, all of that on blockchain. So then pulled that into my portfolio and then was asked to run that business, the platform business, built 3 generations of platforms there at IBM, and just saw the continual same problems clients were running into trying to adopt the technology. I think the VC panel said, really need to make this much more consumable and available to people. So then left to Consensus with a person on my team and founded Kaleido to help solve those problems. So got into blockchain in terms of really solving these problems we saw that our clients are struggling with.
So one of my favorite things about blockchain technology is that you can build really efficient marketplaces by cutting out the middlemen. Right now, specifically, for example, in the financial system, you have banks, you have credit card companies, you have all these different middlemen. And we wanted to do the same thing and cut out the middlemen in the cloud storage system, right? Right now in cloud storage, you have companies like Amazon, Google, Microsoft that hold most of the internet's data. And it's kind of suspicious that all their pricing is roughly the same, and it's pretty expensive. And that's because it's basically like a monopolistic type system. And so blockchains allow us to build really efficient marketplaces because you can have permissionless marketplaces where users don't have to sign up. Anyone can join the marketplace. Anyone can essentially offer cloud storage services to the marketplace. And anyone can transact with anyone across the world with cryptocurrency. And so we're basically using blockchain technology to build these permissionless marketplaces and reduce friction as much as possible and increase competition as much as possible, which then reduces costs and provides just a really great experience for users and purchasers of cloud storage. So that's one of the reasons why we're leveraging blockchain technology.
Yeah, I'll give the Oasis answer, and then maybe for me personally as well. So I think from the Oasis side, Oasis was founded by a number of academics at Berkeley who've really spent, I would say, the last 10 years of their life doing research in data privacy, and more recently have looked at how blockchain and data privacy integrate and work together as well. And so a lot of the work that we're doing is founded on a really deep belief that users should own their data and that data privacy is important. It's broken now and it needs to be fixed. And so we're a general purpose platform right now. We have a lot of companies that are building things tied to different aspects of data privacy, whether it's more efficient markets that use sensitive data, or systems, financial systems that need to manage data marketplaces, et cetera. And in all of those instances, I think the key is how do we help individual users and consumers gain back control of their information, and how do we prevent hacks from happening, information from being leaked that really shouldn't be. And so that's, I think, at the core of what we're doing. I would say on a personal level, in addition to that, I'd say coming from Apple, I have a passion for data privacy as well that is embedded in me, and I think it's exciting to work at a company that cares so much about it. I also went to blockchain because I just wanted to learn something new. It's a new space. I think everyone's learning at the same rate, which is really exciting. And it also means, I'll speak for the MBAs in the room as an MBA myself, it was an opportunity to try to become an expert in something that no one is yet. And so that on a personal growth level has been really exciting for me. I'd say there's also a real need, I think, for people who think about business solutions and business problems, working together with engineers and helping to make that technology consumable. And so that was a really interesting challenge.
I think when I heard about the blockchain space more than a couple of years ago, very intuitively, I could not visualize the business case of this technology. But I think one thing which really resonated with me was the fact that what is that one thing which we're lacking today in the world? And I think we can agree to disagree as well about this, but I think it's trust. I think we've stopped trusting governments. We've stopped trusting big companies. We don't trust the companies which make the smartphones or give us these services, but we still use them, right? We are hooked onto them. But can there be an underlying infrastructure which can really solve the trust issue? Can scale that to billions of people, not just a few parties which agree that they are going to define the norms. And I think that's what got me excited about this new technology and the realm of possibilities. And obviously, very in a naive fashion, I did not think about, hey, how much time is going to take for this to really become something tangible. But I started kind of getting hooked onto the idea, but not just from that cypherpunk or hippie mindset, but I think I started getting the legitimacy of this when I thought about, hey, Zach mentioned about these open permissionless marketplaces now being possible. You align incentives with these things called tokens, and you can create new value or actually reallocate value in a correct fashion. So I think these are fantastic possibilities which we haven't seen before, and you want to try and understand them when they're not obvious to everyone, and you want to try and make sure that you're ahead 10, 15 years down the line. These things are going to become probably hiding in plain sight, and you want to know as early as possible. So I think that's where I decided, hey, I'm going to just go deep dive. Even if the market crashes, I don't care. I'm going to learn something.
Yeah, so it's interesting, and kind of keying off one of the things you mentioned, one of the things that does seem to be true about the space is there's like a small, maybe not so small anymore, but like a very committed following of people who are interested in the space, who are really passionate about the underlying technology. And it really hasn't sort of gone fully mainstream yet. There's sort of a cottage industry in explaining blockchain to novices. How do you think, how do your companies approach the challenge of sort of taking this more mainstream and expanding the sort of underlying value that blockchain provides to a more mainstream audience who is maybe not so interested in blockchain, but is just sort of interested in the benefits that the tech provides.
Oh, sure. I'll defer. It will start on the other end.
Yeah.
Sure, absolutely. I think it's a challenge. So this is a great question. Today we can talk about, hey, we want to do this. We want to build this consensus platform. People don't know what consensus is. People don't care. People want to get their things done, and they want to trust you. So there is this friction of trying to communicate at ease what you're trying to build, but people can't see that yet. And I think there's a spectrum. You have a common, like, broader message you want to share with everyone. Events and platforms like these do serve that purpose, right? I'm sure they're not, most of the audience here is not engineering background, but they're still curious about blockchain, and they want to understand what are the possibilities. At the same time, the other end of the spectrum, you want to interact with developers. Who are the ones who are going to drive the adoption? Who are going to be able to unlock some of those applications that you envision as an underlying platform? So at Harmony, we try to understand the spectrum, and I think out of the 9 months since we started, 6 months we were in stealth mode, and our focus was, let's understand the target audience, the developers first. What do they want? Can we talk in their language? And then slowly we've realized the need to also start communicating a broader message to other audience through forums like these. So I think it's a friction. It's not like very easy to manage, but that's how we've kind of understood who our target audience is. And you can't communicate to the developer the same way you want to communicate to your mom and dad about the use of blockchain.
Yeah, I'd say something similar. I sort of look at it in two prongs, which is developers and then sort of everyone else. And I'd say even for like early adopter developers, there's still a lot of roadblocks with how most platforms work. They're hard to use. And so I think one just real practical thing is we've spent a lot of time and are continuing to spend a lot of time on building tools that will make just basic everyday things for developing easier to do. And I think that's something a lot of protocols are doing as well, I think for the same reason. So one is, how do you take friction out of the system for people who are really enthusiastic and want to engage with your platform? The other is, I think for the broader group, it's really what Sahil said. You have to find solutions. You need to be solution driven. And so it's identifying, really doesn't matter if it's blockchain or not. It's what are the challenges that people are facing, and then how can you apply the solution to it? And so I think I'll say from a marketing perspective, leading more and more with how we think about what we can solve rather than what the tech is really important. And so that's something we're definitely still working on. I would say it's an iterative process that will take time to figure out, but that's a key part of it, I think.
Yeah, I completely agree. And when we talk about Saya, we talk more about it as a cloud storage network that's powered or secured by blockchain technology. We don't talk about it as like a blockchain network. And I think there's a good distinction there. Because of that, our community is very much this cool fusion of blockchain people and storage or IT people. And that's given us a big advantage because a lot of our blog posts and a lot of our other content that we put out is very much focused around how can we improve cloud storage by leveraging blockchain technology. What we're focusing on more this year is pushing applications as great examples of use cases and using those to get people excited about it. We're mostly focused on getting developers excited about it so that they build more applications. But for example, we have two. One is called Goobox, the other is called Pixel Drain, and they're file sharing websites, kind of like Mega Upload, that have built like a traditional website, but everything is stored on the Saya network. And so we share that with our community through Twitter and other means. And then additionally, we're working on some integrations in-house. Later this year, we're going to be rolling out a Plex integration, and Plex is one of the biggest video streaming software in the world. And so we're going to be doing a lot of video streaming stuff, really great demos, really great use cases. So we just want to focus more and more on the use cases, then use those to get developers and then ultimately kind of the general public and community excited about the potentials that blockchain technology can bring.
Hi, thanks. Well, I guess what we've been hearing today, and on this panel, tremendous excitement about the possibility of blockchain, use cases across industry and a personal level, government, commercial applications. So with Kaleido, we really wanted to remove the friction and dramatically accelerate the ability to adopt blockchain and get to the promise and make that promise available to society, individuals, companies. So in terms of the problems we see, we're trying to help people address. The first is just getting the arms around the core technology. So it's like distributed P2P networks, heavy crypto, heavy containerized, new programming languages and frameworks. So if you have a fantastic use case and some real value you want to drive, like you need to get the skills, build the team, and get your arms around all that technology. That's sort of at the proof of concept phase. And then to get to a pilot, now when blockchain's all about the decentralized networks and bringing a community around solving sharing of information, solving some sort of problem. Well, what does that mean to actually run a blockchain in that environment? Well, now for the first time, people were stumbling into something we call shared IT. Like before, you have 1,000 applications you're running if you're, an insurance company or whatever, healthcare, bank. You think blockchain is just 1,001 in your data center, but it's not. It's a completely different paradigm now. With this shared IT world, you have one copy of the data, and that's spread among all the participants, one copy of a shared ledger. So how do you do things as simple as onboard a new member to this network? I was just at a healthcare conference last week, and 6 of these healthcare participants found a tremendously valuable use case around provided data membership that a lot of times just the information is wrong around doctors, who's a network, out of network, and they figured we could all pool this or move that friction, and then we call and we actually see the doctor and he's actually in the insurance plan and we get paid for it and all of those pain points that exist now. But so they did a POC, but everyone in the audience is like, how can we join? We want to join. Well, we can't scale. We can't figure out how to onboard people. And then the governance, there's business governance. So a lot of the tools and workflow around how do you manage this new world, collaborating together, that's at the pilot phase. And then in production, you have your existing systems and sources of data, and these new solutions need to integrate with that. And you have all the classic problems of enterprise IT married to all the new problems of blockchain. So I think those are all the things that we were trying to eliminate the friction around. When we launched last year, we have an enterprise software as a service. You can all go on today. We have a free tier. If you have a great idea for blockchain, just go on there and you can point your app to our platform and we'll run your app, keep it up, and you can build a network. Everyone owns a piece of the network. No one owns the whole network, and just get that off the ground and iterate on the value and the use case, and then worry about, I think the truly hard parts are getting the right people together to collaborate in the right ways, and the technology shouldn't get in the way of that.
So what kind of, in your opinion, makes starting a blockchain startup different or harder or easier than any other kind of startup? And how are your companies kind of thinking about managing those challenges or opportunities?
I think first is that it's been a wild, wild west for a long time, and there's no defined real metrics here. It's funny, in the last VC panel, I wanted to ask all the panelists a question about how do you measure traction of some of the infrastructure projects you've invested in, because honestly, no one has an answer. So I think the first is to really, really be pragmatic about, as a project, as a company, on what is the right metric and not a vanity metric to focus on. I think that's one thing which is not as clear as some of the other traditional probably industries or startup spaces. That's one of the challenges of this space. Also due to this, I think the market in blockchain, you move at like speeds which are crazy. So in blockchain, one day is probably going to be a year in any other industry. Of course, not literally, but things change so fast. You have to keep on, be aware on all these things. Today we heard from Adam in the morning. You wake up, you read Cointelegraph, CoinDesk, the block, and by the next morning, the information you know is stale. So how do you keep moving fast and change on or iterate on your strategy? I think any startup would do that, but in blockchain, it's kind of in amplified or accelerated mode. That's at least what I feel at Harmony. I don't know if my fellow panelists agree. So I think these are a couple of things which are slightly different. The good part is there's immense talent coming into this industry, which is great, which is a great signal, and which is a good leading signal for the longer run. So I feel there are some things which are constant and which give us faith, but the ability to kind of move fast and really define the industry, because we don't have set standards or benchmarks, is probably one of the major differences that I see.
Yeah, I actually think so. I think there's some ways that they're different from traditional startups, but I'd say a lot of the day-to-day that I like that is hard or things to work through, I think are similar to other startups, which is like it's early days, you don't know what the metrics are, you're moving really fast, so priorities change. I'll speak to this from a marketing perspective, which is like, marketing campaigns take some time to work on, a good marketing campaign, and I think the challenge in an early stage startup, and very true in blockchain, is, as Sahil said, all the motivations, what people are working on, change really quickly as well. And so, to some extent, it's how do you make sure that the message that you have continue to resonate or make sense? And I think it means that you have to ask yourself a lot more frequently, is this thing I'm working on still the right thing a lot? And you have to kind of be okay to say, no, I'm going to move on much quicker. In addition to that, I'd say the metrics thing is always hard. And to me, what it means is it's like other early emerging tech where you just don't really know what is going to resonate. So it's a lot of like trying things, and it's almost, the ROI is almost getting an answer of did it work, yes or no, rather than saying like, well, I tried this one thing and that led to massive adoption. It's really like, I tried this thing and that seems to really resonate, so I'm going to continue to try it. So in some ways, it's a much more iterative process than if you were not at a startup. I'd say that's similar to the experience I've had at other startups, but maybe at a more extreme level, just given the early stage of the technology. The one other thing I'd say is, while talent is the talent coming in is incredible, and I'd say that's particularly true on the engineering side. It's really amazing to see. Our team is like almost all PhDs, and they're just, it's incredible. But I would say on the business side, at least I would say, it's a challenge. It's convincing people, particularly after the drop in the market, that this is still something that is really important. I think some people are skeptical of it, which makes sense. And so it's, how do you explain the value to individuals as well to get them on? I think I would say that's true for diversity reasons as well. It's a very male-driven industry. And so one question that I have as a female leader is, how do I bring more people who have different perspectives, whether it's women or people who have different backgrounds in some other way, into the space? And so that's something that I would say is more of a personnel challenge, but I think one for the industry in the long term.
So I'll answer this question, I think, in two ways. One from a technical perspective and one from like a business operations perspective. So one thing that's really different about working at a blockchain startup, specifically on a startup that has its own blockchain, its own protocol, is that the industry is moving fast, but we actually kind of have to move slowly when it comes to development. I feel like this whole mantra in Silicon Valley of move fast and break things, that's fine when you're building like a social networking app and you can release an update, and then if you screw something up, you just release another update the next day and the software auto updates and it downloads the new update and you're fine. But in the blockchain world, when you have software that's decentralized, that means you don't have anything that auto updates. So that means you have to be really careful about releasing things. You have to make sure that the majority of your users are going to buy into whatever new release you put out. And then in addition to that, I think that's probably the biggest point with the updates. And so if you do break something, then you can't just rush out a fix for it. You have to be very, very careful. And even though we've been extremely careful and meticulous with every single release we do, sometimes we do mess up, and then you usually have to wait like 30 days before you can activate a hard fork, and it's a whole mess. And so it's just a very different development atmosphere. And I think when we onboard new developers into the company, it's like we have to instill this different kind of culture in them. Then from a non-technical perspective, this emphasis on community is insane. I've never seen anything like it in any other startup world, probably because if you have a token and then people have a financial incentive, then everyone wants to be part of this community. We are, 10 people at Nebulous, and we have over 30,000 people on Reddit, 25,000 on Discord, over 100,000 on Twitter, because we have Siacoin, which is a token, and it's been around for a while, and people get very excited about it. And so a lot of what I did early on when I joined the team as the first hire on the business operations side was putting rails down to figure out how we build this large community and keep it structured and keep it healthy. And I think this emphasis on community building is very unique to the blockchain and cryptocurrency space.
Hi, I guess I'll have a two-part answer also. Just piggybacking on that, yeah, certainly as a tech startup, a blockchain tech startup has this whole new financing model paradigm. So there's the institutional investors, the traditional route, and now you have token ICOs and all the new evolutions of that, and then different funding models like the Consensus Venture Studio model, I believe, was very different. We came on board and just have been building our company autonomously within a very flat, more of a holacracy type organization. So I think internally structuring a blockchain company, people are very mission driven. They're going to want that autonomy. I think in terms of externally just working with clients, as everyone's mentioned on the panel, that the business models are so exciting and different and new and offer this huge opportunity for people to collaborate in completely different ways. So what that means as a startup now, in the past, we might have worked with Citibank as an individual client, and then people might build a new protocol or software and then sort of make that available and the clients can consume it. Here you're actually working with a whole consortium, a network of players. So we have over 1,500 blockchain consortiums running on our platform since we launched last year. And you could just see these common patterns that are extremely different than you would normally see, in a very good way of how they're coming together to solve problems. In one case, Citi's part of a consortium with 30% of the top 20 banks in the world, and we're working really closely with them. They launched on our platform. It took 6 months from starting to code to launch in December. And just the way they came together with the business and legal and governance to now have people who are, Citi, IMG, ABN AMRO, MUFG, Societe Generale, BNP Paribas, all these big players to tackle a letter of credit process that before used to be manual or email based, and now running that on a blockchain. And now they're ready going to be launching a second use case and building this open financing platform, which about 1,200 participants in this commodities business could all benefit from. So as a tech startup, now there's a whole ecosystem that you're activating, and it's not just I'm writing some software or an app and then just sort of throwing it out in the wild. It's just a different way you're partnering.
Sure. So last question, I'm pretty sure, because I think we're winding down here in terms of time. Talk to me a little bit about how you've seen the sort of prolonged bear market affect the startup ecosystem in blockchain and kind of what you see for the next couple of years for startups in the space. Oh, no.
I think when I joined the blockchain space, and specifically when I started working at Harmony, I had a feeling there's going to be a bear market. And I wanted it to be as soon as possible. Honestly, it's like otherwise you don't get that correction and you kind of be in slightly delusional land, if I may. And I think, so it's not like, wow, what just happened? All my dreams are broken and I want to make this technology real and it's not going to happen. I think it's good in a way that the bear market has, the dust is gonna settle, hopefully sooner than later. Projects like ours are going to be super prudent and disciplined on things like treasury management, things like taking product to market, things like being super iterative, scrappy about building what we are. I think these are things which are important. Thinking about the real use cases and pain points that we're trying to solve. That's how we at Harmony kind of thought about the bear market. So I think we still wake up happy and come to work and make sure that we can launch our product faster, not later than we initially imagined. So I think that's the way we've kind of dealt with it. But of course, it comes with a lot of challenges where there is a blanket fear about, or there's a blanket doubt about whether this technology is going to work or not. And I think you need partners and together with you to believe in this technology. I think that's why I feel even all of us were sitting on this panel. It's not like we're 4 different competing parties trying to take this technology forward. I think all 4 of us are trying to do our own bit to move the needle, right? So I think that's the kind of spirit we need in this space. We need institutional money to come in. So these are some of the macro things which we have in mind. But yes, we need to be doing more to communicate a potential person who's right now sitting on the sidelines that, hey, I want to experience this technology. So I think that's getting harder, but some of the adverse times kind of push out the best innovation and actually push you to think harder. So I think that's something that we've been very practical about at Harmony.
Yeah, I'd say, so I'm relatively new to the space. I think I said earlier I've been in blockchain for 6 months, but watched it on the sidelines a little bit before. I think again, I'll speak to this from a marketing perspective. When I started at Oasis Labs, and I think the industry writ large felt like there were these really new ways of doing things. I mean, companies were moving really fast. They were getting 1,000 Twitter followers a day, a second. And so I think a lot of the typical market signals that you get about whether your product is resonating or not were really skewed. There's many reasons why that's true, but I think one value of the bear market is that it actually, I think, allows companies to take a step back and think about what are the things that actually resonate with customers? What are the pain points that people really need to focus on and solve? And what are the incentives that we need to set up to actually implement these technologies at scale? And I think the earlier phase, and again, speaking from sort of an outside view, we sort of leapfrogged a few of those steps. And so in some ways, I think it's nice to be able to pull back and do the hard work that you need to do at a startup to understand how to scale a business. So I think that's where we are.
Firstly, I think that this industry is pretty new, except for Bitcoin, and Bitcoin has been very cyclical. I got into Bitcoin in 2013, right before a multi-year bear market, right? And you just you start to see that it goes up and it goes down, and I think we are largely not concerned about it right now because at some point it will go back up. It definitely gives us time to focus on development because it's more quiet, especially among the community. The negative part of that is that we tend to see more user engagement during a bull market. So, for example, the number of hosts on our network offering cloud storage space has dropped from about 1,000 to now I think around 350. Not because the market directly affects our network in any way, but just because it directly affects how excited users are, right? And so that's one thing we've noticed. So what we're doing is we're just building so that when the market starts to go up again and there's a ton of exuberance, we try to capture even more of those users where at the next bear market, they'll still be using the network. Another thing is I think we really get to test the team business models in this kind of bear market. A lot of teams have structured their companies in this space where they're just holding their own utility token. And that is kind of a recipe for disaster if you depend on the day-to-day, value of your own token. So we've seen a lot of companies doing layoffs in the last few months because, you could say it's poor treasury management, but I think it's just poor business models. So, we have this utility coin, Sia coin, but we actually don't hold any of that coin. And so we're not concerned with the day-to-day fluctuations on the market. And then I would also say that from a fundraising perspective, it's actually, valuations are definitely down. I know that question was just asked on the last VC panel. They're definitely down. They're much more realistic. But it's a pretty good environment to raise funds in, I would say, if you're selling equity. We're closing up around right now. And it seems like the VCs are very much more focused on, can this idea actually work? Does this model actually work? Does this really have legs? And I think a lot of the overhyped networks and overhyped projects are kind of just falling away. And we're pretty excited about that. So I would say that, there's ups and downs, but largely we're not too concerned.
Yeah, I think great comments on the panel. I mean, we've seen steady growth and no impact with fluctuations in the crypto side of things. So I think just maybe to summarize what everyone was saying, the focus focusing on your mission, doing the right fundamentals, and the winners will emerge from this period.
All right, I think we're at time. Any questions from the audience?
I have a question for Sophia. With all of these financial institutions cooperating on Kaleido, or at least coexisting with Kaleido, is there any emerging contemplation of supplanting automatic clearing?
Yeah, it's interesting as you work through the use cases. I mean, there's so much in terms of the low-hanging fruit, to use that overused phrase, that they can tackle. That, I mean, people are starting there. I mean, I was at Sybos, Swift runs, and one of the clients running on us actually is in the Philippines, and there's 35 million unbanked Philippines. So they built something for financial inclusion around domestic remittances that's basically replacement for, I mean, Swift. These rural banks, 350 rural banks, aren't even on Swift. So I think there will be in the emerging markets, and it was mentioned earlier on the panel, the VC panel, when there's just so much friction and pain points today that people will tackle these bigger, more institutional payment rails. I think for now, when you got to crawl, walk, and run, I mean, there's a lot of ways you can start using this technology for more of like a shadow ledger for problems, things that are manual today or paper-based, and digital transformation, and then meet people where they are, and over time can evolve to replace some of these systems that maybe are long overdue for an overhaul. But that's a great question.
My name is Ming. I'm from the biotech and pharmaceutical industry. Thank you very much for sharing your experience. I wonder, the IBM, when you worked there, the IBM Watson, do they have something, in this domain? And also the Oasis lab.
Yeah, well, Watson is really focused on, bringing more of the machine learning and advanced analytics technologies. There are startups in the space that are combining AI with blockchain. And I believe that is a component of Oasis. I mean, I think tons of applications for healthcare and life sciences on blockchain. There was a lot of talk last week at HIMSS. I don't know if you went to that, the large healthcare information management conference, about AI blockchain. Two really big topics and how that can help in that space. But I'll let Anne add to that.
Yeah, so one of our pillars is the ability to run machine learning algorithms and run massive data sets on our platform. And some of that has to do with scalability architecture. But I think the other piece of this, in the medical space specifically, is combining massive data sets on a network that can retain privacy. And so what we've seen is we've had a few developers and a fair amount of interest in the both biotech and healthcare space who are interested in just that. And it sort of ranges from data sharing across different systems, whether it's from like a surgical center to a hospital. And then also, I think more interestingly, or I would say longer term, are data marketplaces where you as an individual patient can put your data onto a system. That information, when compiled in mass, can be used by data scientists to run massive algorithms and to do predictive analytics. But also, we can preserve the privacy of that information and also retain user ownership. Yeah. So a lot of interesting stuff in that space. Healthcare, of course, takes a long time to adopt new technologies, as I'm sure you know.
There's actually Precision Medicine Genomics Consortium in China that's tackling this for diabetes. So I'd be happy to connect you with them so you could see what they're doing. And today they're just doing that on blockchain. They haven't added AI to that yet. But certainly the two technologies could be used together there.
Hong Kong, not from China.
Well, they just happen to be tackling a use case in China. I think in the US, just the way our electronic medical records are, it's a little harder to tackle, Epic, Siemens, Cerner's, all of that. The data's locked in there. But they're moving toward this data marketplace and the self-sovereign in this particular consortium, which is why I thought you might be interested to talk to them.
Tough question. What did you find to be particularly challenging that you didn't expect would be challenging? Was it like sales operations?
You want to?
Everything. I mean, to start with, my parents don't understand what the hell do I do every day in this space. So, but that's the least thing to worry about. But I think it's you have to really be accountable to yourself as a team, as a company, and I think it goes back to my point. There's no set standards. There's no playbook in this space. So you really need to be on your toes to see if you're doing the right thing and do course correction. That's at least, and I think the more often you can do and I call it course correction, not change, it's a better indicator than just staying with the same constant vision, because things are moving so fast. People, developers who are attached to you are thinking differently, are thinking about other platforms. So I think that rapid kind of course correction and being thoughtful and not really preserving your initial thought is something that I thought was interestingly challenging than what I had imagined before.
I think they're saying we're out of time. Are we out of time?
I think we're going to wrap up. Thank you guys so much for joining us.